Welcome to Tuesdays with Entegra Coach. I'm PJ Clanton. Today we're going to be talking about your Aqua Hot system. Really want to just dive into that a little bit, give you some overview of it, what it has, what features it offers, and how we're implementing that into our motorhome. So the Aqua Hot comes in the 400 and the 450. We are using all diesel Aqua Hots at this time. Been doing that for several years now. We previously, in our early Entegra coaches, we had a propane version, the 375 and the 400, and we have made that switch over to complete diesel, so we're no longer using the propane in any of our diesel pusher products. So we want to talk about that, the 450, and now currently we are using the 600D in our Cornerstone. So just to give you a little overview on that, its primary purpose for the Aqua Hot is to have on-demand hot water. So there are some variables, there are some things that go with this. You have to have, obviously we have to be monitoring our water temperature coming in, we have to be monitoring our water pressure coming in, so there are some things that matter, okay? We need to make sure that we have our water pressure set between 45 and 52. That's going to give us our 1.5 gallons per minute flow, because that is exactly what the Aqua Hot is rated for. It is an on-demand hot water system at 1.5 gallons per minute. So we want to be really careful as not to exceed that water pressure coming in. The other thing you need to realize is, you know, if we're putting really cold water in and we're out in Colorado getting some really cold water, we were looking this up, the average ground temperature in Colorado is around 38 degrees. And the Aqua Hot is capable of bringing that 55 degrees higher. So when you think about that, that's really not as warm of a shower, really not as warm of water that you want to be washing clothes or washing dishes or anything. So the shower is the main one. To me, that's kind of a lukewarm or even chilly shower. I may be spoiled living in a residential house with an on-demand water heater that gives you that constant hot water all the time. So something to think about is that water pressure coming in. We've got to be 1.5 gallons per minute or less in order for that to keep up with the demand of our residential shower that we're putting in your motorhome. The other thing it's going to do is provide heat. So when we say it's providing heat, you're going to your HVAC page on your screen, you're going to your thermostat, you can control it from either one, depending on what model you have. And we're going to set that temperature up, and we select Aqua Hot. It triggers the Aqua Hot to come on, and that's running your floor heat exchanger. So it's just a mini radiator with some fans on the back. We're running our propylene glycol fluid through those radiators, through they call cozy fans, running that through there, and that's creating the forced air heat kind of out of the toe kicks. There's one at the dash, there's one underneath your kitchen sink, one in the living room, sometimes it's facing into the half bathroom, one in your bedroom, one in your rear bath, and then you have one down in the basement. So that is the forced air heat exchangers that are in the coach, and those are going to be running forced air, and again, they are sharing a thermistor for your air conditioners, so your thermistors are up high for that particular heat source. Now, we also include your in-floor heat. So what we're doing is we're taking that propylene glycol, we're taking our PEX tube, our rubber hose, we're running it through the entire floor, front to back. Now I say entire floor, but there's literally going to be some cold spots because there are some areas in that floor that we cannot run that line. In between some slide out tubes where they butt right up to each other. There's going to be your slide out tubes for your vanity slide out. Those are open in the wheel well. I can't put a line there to create that heat. Now, saying that doesn't mean that it's going to be cold there. It's just not going to be as warm as the other areas of your floor. It's still going to have some warmth to it because what we're creating is radiant heat. Radiant heat rises. We're heating that tile, and that heat on the tile will spread. So you'll get warmer areas and you will get cooler areas. Those cooler areas are going to be where we're exposed to the outside, like in that vanity slide out where those ram tubes are in the wheel well. So things to remember and think about there in your floor heat. So the way the system is operating is it is propylene glycol antifreeze. Basically, when I say antifreeze, I don't want you to mix that up. It's propylene glycol boiler fluid, and what that's doing is transferring heat out of the fluid into the air and into the PEX tube, and then up into the floor for the radiant floor heat. And what we're doing is mixing that 50-50, it's propylene glycol, boiler fluid, and distilled water. So that's what your system consists of. Now, depending on your floor plan, you could have anywhere from 9 to 14 gallons of propylene glycol and distilled water in your system. We want to make sure that we maintain that 50-52. If you are not sure how that is set up or what your mixture is, make sure you get a refractor meter, check that, make sure that we're sticking within that 50-50. Now, when we're talking about how the system operates, you turn this on and it brings that tank temperature up to about 185, 190 degrees. What happens to distilled water at 190 degrees? Let's be honest. At 190 degrees, distilled water is going to start to evaporate. But your propylene glycol is not going to be that way. It's not going to evaporate. So if you go out and you're checking your fluid level in your Aqua Hot and you see that it is low on fluid, what should we be adding first? If you said distilled water, you're absolutely correct. We want to put distilled water in first, and then we want to alternate when we're putting in 50-50 or when we're putting in distilled water. Again, we need to get that refractor meter and make sure that we're monitoring that mixture, because if we get outside that mixture, we're not going to be able to retain our heat as much. We're not going to be able to have the efficient performance of that Aqua Hot. And you're going to start to tell that when our mixture gets off between propylene glycol and our distilled water. So we want to make sure that we're keeping out for that. Now, there is some maintenance to the Aqua Hot as well that needs to be done annually, depending on how you use your coach. They will tell you every year for sure it needs to be done. If you're one of those folks that leaves your coach in storage and maybe is not using that Aqua Hot or using that diesel burner, you may have to do that more frequent, because what we know about diesel fuel is that it tends to gum up. If it's not being used, it's not flowing through the system, it tends to gum up and it can create some deposits and things. And when it builds up inside that fuel nozzle, it kind of clogs that up. So we've ran into some issues in the past where, hey, I haven't used this thing for 3-4 months. It's been in storage, you know, we didn't have a chance to get away this year, and it's sitting in storage, and we got it out, and now my Aqua Hot doesn't light. First thing right out of the gate, let's go get that thing maintenance. It's maintenance done. Get the fuel nozzle changed out, get the fuel filter changed out. Let's get all that bad fuel out of there, get it cleaned out, and that operation will come right back to normal. Usually that's what we see, is because that diesel fuel in there has just got gummed up. So not a big issue. Let's just have the maintenance done on it. So now when we get into heating everything up, we've got the floor heat going. We've got the heat exchangers on the inside going. That's going to be your propylene glycol going through those little cozy fans, and the fans turn on. Everything's all warm and cozy. Now, we get all that done. It gets up to temperature. We're running everything, and then everything's satisfied, and your Aqua Hot goes off. That's what it's supposed to do. Now, when it goes off, anytime it has a demand, you turn on the hot water, and it sees that system, it's going to automatically come on again. So we get a lot of questions about, well, I got in the shower, and it was nice and warm, then it got cool, and then it started to get warm again but never come up. So that is kind of a normal operation, because the thing you have to think about is that tank is up to 185, 190 degrees. You turn on some hot water and it runs that water through, which is 185 to 190 degrees. That comes out of the back of the Aqua Hot, goes into your fixtures. We're mixing it with cold water to bring it down to a suitable temperature, and what happens is it's satisfied. The burner's not on because we're 185, 190 degrees. That temperature's got to drop down to a certain level. I believe it's 170 or 165 when it reaches that level. Now the burner comes back on. Well, in the meantime, you've got some colder water inside that water line inside the Aqua Hot where it hasn't been on and active, and we've dropped 30 degrees in that temperature. That's going to be a big difference when you get in the shower. You feel that on your body, or you're washing your hands. You're going to feel a difference there. If it's a 30-degree difference, you'll feel it. It will eventually start to make its way back up, but never get fully up, because we are constantly using water, and that burner is going to stay on continuously and try to play catch up. So one of the things we always recommend is getting in the shower, is to get that burner going ahead of time. So the burner's on before you get in the shower. That way you have consistent hot water the entire time. It's not hot, then it goes out, then it comes back up. So easy way to do that, simply turn on your floor heat. Well, but it's 95 degrees outside. It's okay, because the floor is not going to heat up in the next 15 minutes while you're getting a shower. Get that floor heat going. It circulates that propylene glycol. It activates the burner. Once the burner's on, you get in your shower, and then everything's great. So we don't run into that temperature fallout in that scenario. So something, a little tip that you can keep in your mind there. And the other thing with that, we've already mentioned our maintenance. We've mentioned the water temperature coming in, the water pressure coming in, and then we need to talk about our electric element. So The electric element itself is simply that, just an electric element. It does not have near as much power as you have in the diesel burner. So anytime you definitely need that hot water, you want the hot water, use your diesel burner instead of relying on the electric element. The electric element is going to be good at 60 degrees. It can maintain tank temperature when your outside ambient air temperature is 60 degrees or above. So keep that in mind as well. The electric element is for small things, washing hands, things like that. We have had customers that are able to use their floor heat because they're not in cold weather. It just kind of gets chilly at night, and it's able to sustain and keep their floor heat running and keep their floors warm just with the electric element without using that diesel burner. So keep that in mind as well. So let's talk about the 600 a little bit that we're putting in the Cornerstone. The 600 gives us another circulation pump where we have been able to completely separate out our floor heat from our zone 1. So now it's a dedicated zone 1, the front of the coach. It's a dedicated floor heat. That is a dedicated pump in the Aqua Hot and dedicated rear of the coach with the basement on it. So makes a lot of sense to have all three of those pumps and have that dedicated floor heat. We can run that all the time and not have an issue. Now we can do that with the other system as well, but it does tend to bring heat into those other zones when maybe we don't want that heat in those zones. So now with a dedicated line, we're only running the floor heat, we're only heating up that floor. So that'll make a big difference. The other thing the 600 has is it has a second electric element. So with the second electric element, now we will get more heat with that electric element. Is it going to be enough to take a shower? Well, again, that depends on those variables. That depends on your incoming water pressure. That depends on your incoming water temperature that you have coming into the coach. So all of those variables are going to take into consideration. It may work for you in some places. It may work for you in Florida. It may work for you in Arizona. It may not work for us here in Indiana. So something that you'll have to try, see what's best for you, see how it best fits you, and make sure we keep those maintained. Make sure we keep that diesel side of that thing maintained. We're doing our annual maintenance. We're keeping that up to par. If you got any questions, comments about your Aqua Hot, just want some more information about it, give us a call, shoot us an email. We'll be happy to help. Thanks for joining us for Tuesdays with Entegra Coach.